Coming up, this week the local elections are upon us again, and we're being served up the same stale sandwich of political despair between slices of austerity 2.0 and scapegoating of migrants, with a side of ignoring the continuing damage of Brexit. On May the 1st, elections are taking place in 23 local authorities in the biggest test of the electoral temperature since last year's general election. But for a majority of us, we shouldn't be fooled into thinking our vote will make any real difference. Thanks to our archaic first-past-the-post system, around half of all votes don't even count, and the results, particularly at a local level, are as much about luck as democracy. Stay tuned. Before I get into an analysis of the various flavours on offer in this week's local elections in England, I want to first touch on one of the fundamental problems with British democracy: first past the post. This system is so broken that in places like Lewisham in London last time, Labour won every single seat on Lewisham Council from just over half, 52.2% of votes. So almost half of all votes cast were for other parties, yet those other parties received zero representation in the council chamber. This is bonkers and results in a lack of voter involvement and interest in politics generally, people realising that their vote is in many cases completely pointless. That same year, also in London, the Conservatives won 70% of seats on Kensington and Chelsea Council from only 43.9% of votes. A stonking majority for the Tories, based on a minority of the vote. And it also works in favour of the Liberal Democrats sometimes too. They won 89.3% of seats on St Albans Council last time from 47.9% of the votes. This isn't democracy. It's a game rigged in favour of the House being the established parties in England. First past the post is a relic of a bygone era and continues to distort the will of the people, to borrow a phrase. As the Electoral Reform Society points out, under first past the post, all votes not cast for the one or multiple winners in each division or ward go to waste. Spread across a whole council area, parties can often secure a substantial number of votes and still be left with zero representation. This system leaves millions of voters feeling disenfranchised. It's a system that's broken and it's time for it to be fixed. There's a tried and tested alternative to the unfair results we see in England. Both Scotland and Northern Ireland use the fairer single transferable vote system, avoiding the distorted results produced by FPTP. STV, single transferable vote, is a form of proportional representation that means everyone's vote counts. Keir Starmer himself was elected leader of the Labour Party on an STV system. Good for the Labour Party, but too good for the English electorate, it seems. Since STV was introduced in Scotland in 2007, councils in Scotland bear a much closer resemblance to how local people actually voted. You can see here how the 2022 results for Edinburgh, Fife and Glasgow show it's now rare in Scotland for one party to win a majority of seats in a council chamber from a minority of votes, meaning councillors have to work together across party divides, which can only be a good thing. Anyway, that's my rant about FPTP over with, so let's turn our attention instead to the runners and riders, the state of the parties and the run-up to this week's local elections. Will Farage's reform outfit obliterate the Tories and Labour? Will the Greens and the Lib Dems clean up? Before we take a closer look, if you're finding this video interesting, then do leave a comment below, give it a like, check you're subscribed to the channel, and please share a link on your social media. So let's take a look at the runners and riders. Let's start with the Tories, widely tipped to be the biggest losers in these elections, being as they were on somewhat of a Boris Johnson post-Brexit high the last time that these seats were contested. But now that a large majority of the electorate have seen through the Brexit scam perpetrated on them by the oligarch class via that ridiculous referendum, and with a deeply unpleasant and unpopular leader now in 2025, the Tories appear to be on a hiding to nothing. Under Kemi Badenough's leadership, the Tories are hemorrhaging support faster than you can say arrogant, argumentative authoritarian. Internal tensions are boiling over, with figures like Robert Honest Bob Jemrick floating the idea of uniting with Reform UK Party Limited to keep the Lib Dem and Labour vote share contained. After 14 years of austerity, corruption and incompetence, they've adopted a blame everyone else strategy. Immigrants, still their go-to scapegoat. The cost of living crisis, apparently it's our fault for not working hard enough. Crumbling public services, must be woke councils wasting money on libraries and inclusivity. Bad Enough and her Tories are panicking. They know they're going to get a kicking. They're going to get humiliated. So now they're pinning their hopes on Bad Enough's culture wars. But not even their traditional base are buying it anymore. The Tories aren't just losing. They're irrelevant because Badenoch is focusing all her energy on waging culture wars over gender identity, as we saw at Prime Minister's Questions this week. She isn't addressing the issues that matter most to voters: the post-Brexit stagnant economy, crumbling public services, and the post-Trump world order. Enter Reform UK Party Limited, Nigel Farage's latest oligarch-backed vanity project, positioning themselves as the common sense alternative. But anybody paying attention to that isn't fooled. But there's an awful lot of people not paying attention, judging by the fact that the latest Techni UK tracker poll for The Independent shows Reform to be in joint first place with Labour on 24% each, 2 points ahead of Bad Enough's Tories. This week's elections on May 1st will reveal if the polls are genuine or whether potential Reform voters will rub their two brain cells together before marking their X on an actual ballot paper. And then there's also the small matter of a by-election in Runcorn and Helsby, a seat with a large Labour majority at the last election, but which Reform are hoping to win. As things stand, they are the favourites. And if they fail to win, it'll raise serious doubts as to whether Reform is ever capable of making a significant breakthrough in a general election. And just as importantly, in the local council elections, there are reports that Farage wants to try to run council groups remotely from the party's headquarters, deciding on group leaders and lots more. It'll be interesting to see the bust-ups that will inevitably happen should Reform win big. Get your popcorn ready. And I must say a few words about vetting. They've tried to professionalise their procedures, but there are still massive vetting problems for Farage's gang. For example, the candidate for Runcorn, Sarah Pochin, a rare female in Reform, has previously been reprimanded for abusing her role as a magistrate. Top calibre people, these Reform wannabe councillors. Yet another recently suggested that Britain should have sided with Hitler in the Second World War. And there are many, many others of that ilk still standing for election under the Reform banner. Their ranks are also swollen with opportunist ex-Tories, and their policies are a rehash of the failed right-wing populism of Johnson and Truss, whose mini-budget Farage at the time described as the best Conservative budget since 1986. But on to Labour. The best I can say about them at this stage under Starmer is that they may be the lesser evil. But I'm increasingly unsure about even that. There's no bold vision or transformative policy. They're trying to close the government spending gap, not by bringing taxation on the unearned income of the wealthy up to the same level as that on earned income, not by implementing a digital services tax on the American corporations operating in the personal data farming industry, but instead by slashing public services, abolishing winter fuel payments, ruling out the removal of the two-child cap for universal credit, and all the while cozying up to Trump and, worst of all, Israel. I'm a natural Labour voter, but I'm not prepared to vote for them at this moment in time. So, what's the alternative? The Greens? Well, at least they're pushing for real change. Proportional representation, climate action and social justice. They're gaining ground in local politics and could make significant strides in these elections. In a first-past-the-post system designed to silence alternative voices, the Greens are still making progress, and I'd like to see them do well. The Lib Dems, in my area of the country down here in the southwest, they're now the dominant political force and seem to do a reasonable job at local level. For me, they're now more to the left and more radical than Starmer's Labour. But it's just so difficult to forget their past under Nick Clegg as Tory enablers and betrayers of students. It's tough, isn't it? But those of you able to vote this week, please do just that. Support candidates and parties that align with your values, not just the ones who seem to have a chance of winning. Sure, your vote might be wasted, but the more votes that count for nothing, the more obvious the flaws in first past the post become, pushing us further towards electoral reform, if I can still use that tainted word. And above all, stay informed and engaged. The status quo thrives on apathy. Let's not give it the satisfaction. So, thanks for watching this video right to the end. If you're interested in getting more involved with the channel, memberships are now available for a small subscription that helps cover my expenses in producing these videos. Perks include the option of gaining early access to my videos, prioritised replies to your comments, and involvement in shaping the future content of my videos like this one through the Truth to Power community. If membership is not for you, then not a problem. You can still subscribe for free, and I appreciate you watching, sharing and commenting on my videos. Thanks again.